Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unique Arts. I'm Costco Picasso. You can also call me Shannon. Today, we're going to be talking about 34 books that should actually change your life. So, I try not to do topics like this too much, I guess I could say, but then again, I don't have that many videos on my channel, so maybe I do. But either way, if you aren't aware, this is pretty much in direct response to Mark Manson's life-changing books, 33 life-changing books, so I'm adding one more. And although I think some of those books were good, I wasn't initially going to watch it because I could tell it was just going to be a long list of self-help books, pretty much. And I do not like those books. I think they're mostly ludicrous. Of course, again, there were some on there like Man's Search for Meaning and stuff like that. That's a great book. But still, I think self-help books, that industry is largely ludicrous. It's contemporary snake oil salesmen, sophism, and in some instances just, false saviors. So very unhealthy. And that's not to say you can't change your life. It definitely takes self-awareness and will, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And the best ways to learn that which you can is through various media, including books, of course. Today we're just going to be talking about works of literature, of course, some books, but I find that books will best help you learn certain values and thereby actually change your life are not expressly written to sell you something. They kind of just lay out the human condition, and in many regards, the allegorical lesson is eternal, or at the very least, the tragic outcome can teach you what not to do. So, in some regards, some of those self-help books that do work are actually doing the exact same thing. They're just rehashing what has already been done, pretty much, but selling it to you in a different format, and for some reason, it's the format people really eat up. But today we're going to talk about 33 books that should actually change your life if you let them. And if you are, mostly it will happen if you're a self-correcting and eternally concerned person. This list by no means is all-encompassing, as there are many more wonderful books that can change your life, and I either have not read them, so I'm not going to include them in this list, or they simply weren't the first that came to mind. So there's that. These books are not... Some of these you will definitely have heard of, but some of them are perhaps not as well known. They're not generally advertised in a lot of ways today just because their moral and ethical sense is largely grounded in the Christian religion, which many have a disdain for today. I personally do not have a disdain for the Christian religion and traditional religion in general, and I definitely do not subscribe to contemporary ideas of forging your own gods based on institutions and political ideologies, which I think is incredibly unhealthy. But in some regards, perhaps that grounding in the Christian religion is why, in the past, the societies grounded in faith didn't have self-help books, But these are not in any particular order besides, well, being alphabetically, I don't have them ranked as far as greatness and their ability to change your life. And for the sake of length and digestibility, I will tell you some things that you should be able to learn from the book and get you started on the right foot. That is actually reading the book, of course, by reading you the first paragraph or so of each of them. But you should read it for yourself, of course, and hopefully some of these will pique your interest. So first up is A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce, the great Irish author. So just to give you an idea of some things you may be able to glean from this is just kind of the difference of thought between innocence and experience. Also how naturalism will play a role in one's identity, even if one adamantly and consciously doesn't want it to necessarily, kind of like the character here. And then also religion, or more specifically, the religion that one is raised in. Idea, does its practitioners' shortcomings rule your understanding of it? Or is that the case with anything else? Do you have a disdain for certain things just because you don't like a particular person that also identified with that or something? Once upon a time, in a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road, and this moo cow that was down along the road met a nice's little boy named Baby Taku. So a bit different. Next, we have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Again, highly recommend reading any Mark Twain, and in some regards, a book like Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe might also fit along these lines. But the idea of adventure, your own sense of adventure, but also having a sense of morality, even if it's relatively juvenile, really helps you a lot in life. And then hard times help you grow. That's always a good, pretty solid one. And you will always live with the conscience that you have. So it's best to not betray that conscience. You don't know about me. Without, you have read a book by the name of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but that ain't no matter. That book was made by Mr. Mark Twain, and he told the truth, mainly. Next up, I have Aesthetics. Well, this is volume 1 of the Aesthetics. I've actually not read his second volume, but this is by Dietrich von Hildebrand, Catholic philosopher, 20th century. So, relatively recent, I guess. Some ideas, again, is that beauty is important. Something we don't think about a lot. Beauty is important, and it can be found in many places. Also, relativism is rife today, and that's mostly because mediocrity is also rife. Don't be a relativist towards eternal things, and don't be mediocre, essentially. Some things can be approached only with great reverence, for it is only then that they disclose themselves to us as they truly are. One of these is beauty. It is of course true that the philosophical analysis of beauty demands a genuine sobriety and the thirst for truth that is required by philosophical eros. But this analysis also requires us to approach beauty with reverence, indeed, with love. Beauty kindles love, and only the one who remains captivated by it, only the one who is intoxicated by it, only the one who remains a lover while he is investigating its essence can hope to penetrate its essence. We also have Animal Farm. This is my copy of Animal Farm. So, just another general idea from this. Revolution likely won't result in how you think it will. So be wary of those who promise you the world. Mr. Jones of the Manor Farm had locked the hen houses for the night, but was too drunk to remember to shut the potholes. Number 5 is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is my very nice copy here. A good idea from it, a good lesson to be learned is abandoning your morality for society's superficialities will likely ruin you. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Number 6, Beowulf. This is J.R.R. Tolkien's translation, hence the name there. I hope you're acquainted with him. But pretty much, choose your battles and honor your heritage. Very important. Lo, the glory of the kings of the people of the Spear Danes, in days of old we have heard tell, how those princes did deeds of valor. Number 7, the Bible, or the Holy Bible, as it's generally called. I just put it in for B for Bible, which is just a collection of books, and that's what it is, a collection of writings by various prophets in mostly the land of Judah, land of Israel. And the world is hard to understand at times, and bad things are going to happen. But what do you rely on in these times? Yourself is likely not good enough, to be perfectly honest. That is why people have always believed in higher powers, and they still do, even if non-traditional. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Number 8, the Book of Mormon. So this is one perhaps a lot of people that are acquainted with the Bible might not be acquainted with this. A lot of people really don't like this book despite having never read it. I can help you with that. Redo a first verse here in a second. But similar to the Bible, but it's mostly kind of like trust in the Lord, do what is right, and you will be rewarded, even if not here, but especially in the eternities. I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents, therefore I was taught somewhat in all the learning of my father, and having seen many afflictions in the course of my days, nevertheless, having been highly favored of the Lord in all my days, yea, having had a great knowledge of the goodness and the mysteries of God, therefore I make a record of my proceedings in my days. Continuing with B, we get The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. One of the best authors of all time, if not the best, in my opinion. So there's that. But something to glean from it is people have free will. Even if they don't want it, you should do more with it than the average man, or try to, at least, because the average man doesn't in many regards. Alexei Fyodorovich Karamazov was the third son of Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, a landowner well known in our district in his own day, and still remembered among us owing to his gloomy and tragic death, which happened 13 years ago, in which I shall describe in its proper place. Number 10, and on to the letter C, we get The Chronicles of Narnia. So obviously, it's like a 7-book series. My kids turned them all the other way, but still really good, of course. Good theme to glean from this that I don't really touch on the other ones is redemption. This is a Tolkien quote, but I think it works here too, is that not all who wander are lost. And then from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Book 1. Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This is perhaps where I'm the most liberal as far as what I'm allowing into this list, but this is number 11, Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. It's actually only about 20 pages, and I would recommend that you also read Walden by his, which is a couple hundred pages. But something from this that you can get is like, governments do not care for you, and they generally just stifle freedom. Understand this for ease of existence. I heartily accept the motto that government is best, which governs least, and I should like to see it acted up to more rapidly and systematically. Carried out, it finally amounts to this, which also I believe, that government is best which governs not at all. And when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government which they will have. Number 12, Confessions by St. Augustine. So, again, the natural man is an enemy to God, prone to restlessness and slothfulness. And a remedy that Augustine provides for this is prayer. You are great, Lord, and greatly to be praised. Great is your power, and infinite is your wisdom. Number 13 is Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol. Some things to learn from this is kind of about the relationship between land and people, pretty generally, but also that absurdities are that. They're absurd, and they should not be justified, but should be condemned. A rather pretty little chase on springs, such as bachelors, half-pay officers, staff captains, landowners, with about 100 serfs, in short, all such as are spoken of as gentlemen of the middling sort, drive about in, rolled in at the gates of the hotel of the provincial town of N. Number 14, we get D for Dialogues of Plato. So another one you should read as well is The Republic by Plato, and this is just a collection, all various stuff from Plato. So there are a lot of things to learn from Plato, to put simply. The immortality of the soul is a big one, though. And going with the cover here, The Death of Socrates by Jacques-Louis David, I will read the first opening lines from the Phaedo, which actually starts on page 313 of this collection. Were you yourself, Phaedo, in the prison with Socrates on the day he drank the poison? Yes, Echecrates, I was. Number 15, we get E for Either Or by Soren Kierkegaard. Seen as the father of existentialism, he was a Lutheran pastor as well. Some ideas to get from this is temporary reliefs are not the answer. Even the ethical life pales compared to the religious life. What is a poet? An unhappy man who hides deep anguish in his heart, but whose lips are so formed that when the sigh and cry pass through them, it sounds like lovely music. Number 16, we get our singular F, and that is Faust by Goethe, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Some things to learn from this is do not let your ambitions destroy you through heresy, more particularly, but also have hope, love, and faith. The sun is chanting his ancient song in contest with the brother spheres, rolling with thunder steps along down the predestined course of years. His presence gives the angels might, though fathom it none ever may, and thy sublime works still are bright with splendor of creation's day. Number 17, and into H, we get Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. It's a pretty short read. So, just an idea is beware of your humanity. What are people willing to do to hold on to power? This could have occurred nowhere but in England, where men and sea interpenetrate, so to speak, the sea entering into the life of most men, and the men knowing something or everything about the sea, in the way of amusement, of travel, or of bread-winning. Into the I, which we have a few of these, I get first The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So more Dostoevsky, which you can't go wrong with that, to be honest. But something to get from The Idiot is have compassion, have humility, be forgiving, and be gentle, even if others think less of you for it. At 9 o'clock in the morning, towards the end of November, the Warsaw train was approaching Petersburg at full speed. It was thawing and so damp and foggy that it was difficult to distinguish anything 10 paces from the rail line to right or left of the carriage windows. Some of the passengers were returning from abroad, but the third-class compartments were most crowded, chiefly with people of humble rank, who had come a shorter distance on business. All, of course, were tired and shivering. Their eyes were heavy after the night's journey, and all their faces were pale yellow to match the fog. Continuing with our eyes, we get number 19, the Iliad. Also highly recommend the Odyssey. I have it here combined. There are many translations of this. I quite like this one, which was by Samuel Butler. But again, there are others which people have different preferences for. A question perhaps take from the Iliad is, what makes a man? But then also, sometimes you'll have to do things you don't want to, but just because you have to. Sing, O goddess, the anger of Achilles, son of Peleus, that brought countless ills upon the Achaeans. Many a brave soul did it send hurrying down to Hades, and many a hero did it yield a prey to dogs and vultures. For so were the counsels of Zeus fulfilled, from the day on which the son of Atreus, king of men, and great Achilles first fell out with one another. For number 20, I have Irish fairy and folk tales. So I think the Irish ones are particularly rich, and I have Irish heritage myself, so I'm particularly fond of it, but you should read folklore to know your roots. They will ground you in a way that really only God can improve upon. I would also recommend other folk tales and such, not just the Irish, of course, and perhaps not even just your own, but also your own. Stuff like the American Indian, Native American ones are pretty interesting as well and worth a read, as these things are pretty much innately human. And from a poem at the beginning of this called The Fairies by William Allingham. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. Number 21, continuing with I, we have a few of these, is Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. Something to learn from this one is simply, bravery and integrity. Good things to have. In that pleasant district of merry England, which is watered by the river Don, there extended in ancient times a large forest, covering the greater part of the beautiful hills and valleys which lie between Sheffield and the pleasant town of Doncaster. Okay, and on to K. This is Kierkegaard's Provocation. So not written explicitly by Kierkegaard. This is kind of a compilation of some of his more spiritually impacting quotes. So taken from all of his works. This was, of course, compiled by a couple of editors. But regardless, definitely worth a read. It can help you learn to not follow the crowd. You are an individual. And even more notably, salvation is personal. So, very much tied to the individual. Can there be something in life that has power over us, which little by little causes us to forget all that is good? And can this ever happen to anyone who has heard the call of eternity quite clearly and strongly? 23, we get Kon-Tiki by Thor Heyerdahl. So this is a 20th century adventure, so just have a sense of adventure. Do that which others say is impossible. Once in a while, you find yourself in an odd situation. You get into it by degrees and in the most natural way, but when you are right in the midst of it, you are suddenly astonished and ask yourself how in the world it all came about. So number 24, I have Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I couldn't find my physical copy somehow, which feels like a grievous sin. But regardless, some things to definitely learn from this is fight for good, and that heroes are often ordinary in many ways. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Number 25, we have Lost Illusions by Honoré de Beausert. He's got a silly French name, but it is what it is. Things won't always work out, but trust the absolutes, like family, and if not that, perhaps God. At the period when this history begins, Stanhope's press and cylinders for the distribution of ink were unknown to provincial printing houses. Number 26, I have The Narrow Bridge. So I feel like this is a bit akin to Man's Search for Meaning, a bit more Judeo-mysticism focused, you could say. Not nearly as well known. This is Narrow Bridge by Isaac Newman. But technically, the subtitle is Beyond the Holocaust. So he was a Holocaust survivor as well. But some things to learn from this is terrible things happen, but make sure you are better because of it and not the monster you've been treated like. Jews first came to Zidonska Voda in the mid-18th century, and the first weavers came in 1816. Number 27, we get Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's in this little collection of short stories I have. It's about 100 pages, 120 pages or so. Notes from the Underground is. Some things to definitely learn from this is intelligence is not the source of happiness. But also don't let it be the source of your fall. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. No, I am not a pleasant man at all. I believe there is something wrong with my liver. However, I don't know a damn thing about my liver. Neither do I know whether there is anything really wrong with me. I am not under medical treatment and never have been, though I do respect medicine and doctors. Number 28, and into O for just a second, we get Of Human Bondage by W. Somerset Maugham. And it's a couple questions to ask perhaps pertaining to this story is, should we seek our desires over the tried and true things, such as a nuclear family? And which one truly puts you in bondage? The day broke gray and dull. The clouds hung heavily, and there was a rawness in the air that suggested snow. 29 is Paradise Lost by John Milton. Perhaps obvious question for this one, if you're acquainted with it, is, do we have free will? And also that pride plays a role in everyone's life. Of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal tastes brought death unto the world, and all our woe, with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us, and regain the blissful seat, seeing heavenly muse, the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai, didst inspire that shepherd, who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning, how the heavens and the earth rose out of chaos. Another P1 that's also pretty popular is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Some things that you can learn from this is just about the dangers of societal pressure, but also that self-discovery and discipline take time. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. 31, and our sole S, we have Summa Theologica by Thomas Aquinas. This is actually just his selected writings, but regardless. Again, more religious, of course. The idea of reconciliation to God, or just the divine, depending on your persuasion. That which is greater than me, at least, reconciliation to that which is greater than me, takes a mediator, Christ specifically, in this example. We must now consider the potential parts of justice, that is, of the virtues annexed thereto, under which head there are 2 points of consideration. 1. What virtues are annexed to justice. 2. The individual virtues annexed to justice. 32, we get T for Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The idea that sacrifice is necessary. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received, for good or for evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. 33, second to last, we get To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I think this one is also pretty well known. Should protect the innocent and simply don't judge a book by its cover. Although this one's a nice cover. Very fancy. When he was nearly 13, my brother Jim got his arm badly broken at the elbow. When it healed, and Jim's fears of never being able to play football were assuaged, he was seldom self-conscious about his injury. And then 34, so last, but perhaps not least, we get Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. If you're interested in other abolitionist readings, I would highly recommend Frederick Douglass. But general idea, I think it's pretty easy to get behind, especially in these days. Men deserve freedom. Late in the afternoon of a chilly day in February, 2 gentlemen were sitting alone over their wine in a well-furnished dining parlor in the town of P, in Kentucky. There were no servants present, and the gentlemen, with chairs closely approaching, seemed to be discussing some subject with great earnestness. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Please let me know if you have read some of these before, and let the others know in the comments that it is great. Definitely worth a read. And perhaps let me know if any of these perhaps piqued your interest. and that you will be adding it to your reading list soon, or moving it up on your list if it was already on there. But regardless, please feel free to like and subscribe and comment. As I mentioned, I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you guys soon. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.